Huge news out of Arsenal this morning as the club has decided to pivot to badminton because this football thing, well, it's just too easy. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name's Elliot Smith. You can find me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. 6-0 away, 5-0 away. You can't keep playing football when it's that easy, so badminton it is. Looking forward to seeing it, and I'll level with you. I bet Bukayo Saka will be fantastic at that too, chasing around the shuttlecock. Bet he'd get to every shuttlecock and just bat it over and it would find the corner. That, by the way, that is what the thing that flies over and back in badminton is called the shuttlecock, which I think is sort of interesting and fun. What a weekend of football. We have the rare opportunity to thank Chelsea Football Club for existing. We still have the ability to thank Tottenham Hotspur for existing because can't smile without them. We have the ability to laugh at Harry Kane, who is on pace to not only be a legendary trophy dodger, but when he wins the Golden Boot, for those of you who are not aware, the trophy for the Golden Boot in the Bundesliga, have you seen it? It's a cannon. So this guy who has not won any trophies ever is going to have to hold a cannon over his head. And if we've won a major trophy at the end of the season, it will be as though he is celebrating his boyhood club Arsenal. So there's all of that going on. And not to mention a sold-out Emirates watched Arsenal stomp Manchester United women, which was brilliant. Clive and Tim were there. We might get to that at the tail end of this pod, but we've got a lot to talk about because Clive is doing his ironing for Portugal. I don't have clothes worth ironing, but we'll be out there hopefully sharing a drink with some people, but we'll be recording some really fun stuff out there. So hopefully you'll join us for that. And it gives us a chance to, I think, bring you a little closer to the game. And then I'll be in for the Newcastle game. So hopefully we can join up for a beer, but anyone who knows me knows it'll probably be a whiskey, but that's fine. Looking forward to seeing people for that. And just feel really fortunate as ever to have the chance to do that and see people and feel close to the club at a time when we are flying. So much good stuff to talk about. And probably not a lot of time for me to waffle on, except to say that I hope you will check out our Patreon. When we do instant reactions now, we do them with video so you can watch, not just listen, and they're live streamed. So if you want to see them literally right at full time, you can do that. We're doing rewatch videos. We may have to do a scouting video because the transfer rumors are heating up. But usually we do those in January and in the summer because, keep them in their place. And then there might be a 3 big questions episode this week, which is a fun one that we do. So I hope you join us there. But if you don't join us there, glad to have you here. And glad to have here with me now is Tim. You can find him on Twitter at Stillmanator. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
And Clive, you can find him on Twitter, Clive BC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
I got to say, Clive, I know you went to the women's game. I know you almost saw Luton do something against United. I got to say that. I watched that game. I thought we were going to have nearly the perfect weekend, but United, with their low block and their counterattacking style, were able to hold on just long enough. So sorry you didn't get the perfect weekend.
FA Cup football played by the small club Manchester United, right, on the break. So to be discussed, Elliot, if you ever get to a power rankings, let's break that system apart.
Credit to Eric Ten Hag rescuing Manchester United's 3 points by bringing on his secret weapons, Scott McTominay and Johnny Evans. That's Manchester United in 2024. Laugh away, please laugh away. Okay, guys, I think it's pretty basic. Arsenal have gone from being very, very good. The data told us we were very good. Even if our debates and discussions were around some issues, we've been very good this season. Since we've come back from Dubai, though, it's been another level. It's just been outrageous. I think we're on plus 19 goal difference now in 5 games, 15 points from those 5 games. A 6-0 away Premier League victory, followed up by a 5-0 away Premier League victory, something I don't think that's ever been done by Arsenal before. And I'm just going to start with you, Clive, and ask this. Has anything changed that you can see? I'm really fascinated by this because I'm wondering what changed like on the pitch. Like, for example, the thing where Saliba goes way out wide, right? And Ben White's coming and inverting and Kiwior staying out wide. Like, what have you changed? What do you see? What are notable changes in our football that you see that have taken us up this level? Because I think there is some suggestion that this is just how we've been playing. And there were some teams that were going to get it. And finally, the teams are getting it because we're finishing. But what's changed? Has anything really materially changed that you think has taken us up this level?
I'm so glad you asked me this question because as Tim will know, when you're not on the pod, you have all the answers, right? When you are talking, you have all the answers. Oh my God, why didn't they say this? I would have said this.
I need to correct you. Whether I am on the pod or not, I do not have the answers. So I just want to be clear on that.
And sometimes, just when you're losing your rag, you guys then go and say something. So now I know what it's like when people are listening to me, right? So, But yeah, so this is exactly the question I wanted to answer today without even realizing it. But we can all see things have changed a little bit systemically, right? So, but they haven't changed every week. They changed because of certain players who are playing. So we've seen a bit more rotation. We've seen Odegaard drop deeper on occasions, then go high. We've seen Ben White go inside, then go outside. We've seen Havertz and Trossard shift around. We've seen Martinelli and, well, particularly Saka drop into the inside when Ben White goes on the outside. These are all principles that we've done before. I think we've added layers of rotation because we can now talk to more layers, where I think we were a little bit more pod orientated with a left and a right and a base, and then a key person passing down the middle, which tended to be Thomas Partey into Odegaard, and then we'd start. Do you know what I mean? We'd start from there and we're off to the races. That team has been stopped a little bit. So if you imagine, right, you're doing a team talk, and Burnley, as Paul said on the IR, Burnley had watched us. They weren't about to roll out there and just get slapped. They'd watched us, our set pieces, everything else. They'd watched us. Every team watches us, and every team has a plan. So what allows you to implement your plan over the opposition? And it's speed of thought, very varied levels of rotation. So speed of movement, speed of rotation, speed of pass. What that does to the opposition is, oh my God, look at them moving. Look at their bi-directional movement. Look at the pace of pass out to this player. Look how he takes it and turns. And I tell you what you do then. You say, I can't live with this. I'm going to defer. And that's how you implement your style on somebody else, because they literally can't live with you. Quick restarts, quick throws, ball in the goalkeeper's hands, very fast. They can't get into their organised defence. They can't get there quick enough. Before you know it, he's through into Havertz, bang, into his feet. He's turned, one touch out to the wing, and we're running forward. So you implement your plan on somebody by IQ, being on the same one brain, speed of rotations, and speed of recognizing when to rotate. So you're literally playing at a level and a pace of movement and execution that forces your opposition to step away. Now, if you notice in some of those clips in the Burnley game, look at some of their players' faces when the cameras panned to them. They looked tired. I can roll back to 3 years ago at the Emirates when Man City came. I couldn't even see what they were doing. They were moving so many times. And we looked tired trying to keep up with them. You know? So the level of movement, Elliot, the level of understanding and execution has gone up, allowing us to implement. When people say, we're controlling games, I say, what does that mean? Explain it. I'm trying to explain it. That's how you control a game. That's how you control your position.
Can I ask you a super quick follow-up on that,
Mm-hmm.
Clive? How much of that do you think is the plan, has been the plan, and you were executing it, is a tweak? And how much is, sometimes, what do they say? What's the mother of invention? A necessity is the mother of invention, right? Which is Zinchenko comes out and we play this left back who's not really an inverting left back. So we have to tweak it. How much of this is necessity becoming the mother of invention? And now with Kiwior coming in, Mikel had to tweak it, and we're creating this massive right side overload. How much is that in terms of how we've found this new way of playing? If it is, I mean, it's not a new way of playing, but a new kind of tweak to the way we're playing.
It's what we're doing now at the moment for 2 games. And I promise you, Kiwior now's got some rhythm in his boots. If you wanted to invert Kiwior, he'd be fine. You can see that, can't you, by the way he's receiving the ball, way he's moving. So what if we decide one week to do the left back and one week to do the right back? Problems for the opposition. Problems for the laptop boys. So for me, this was always the way. And so if you guys listen to me long enough, hear me ranting about certain players, and the reason why I like them, I like 2 jobbers. I like players that can do 2 jobbers. In fact, some of our players are doing 3. Odegaard now has got 2 jobs. He's got one deep, got one high. Ben White's got 2 jobs. Havertz has got 2 jobs. When Trossard gets the ball in midfield, he's a better midfielder than Gabriel Jesus. He's got 2 jobs, to be a striker and a midfielder. And Saka, 2 jobs, creative midfielder, striker, winger, maybe 3 jobs. And now you get more of these players that can do 2 jobs to 3 jobs. You know what you're going to have? The ability to rotate, the ability to shape change and change your face. And this is the exciting thing, because the players are waiting to come in they can all do a couple of jobs. Do you see what I mean? In game. So we haven't seen nothing yet. This is the exciting thing. So those people are moaning about buying Kai Havertz. Can you see it now? How many jobs does he do in a game? His unique profile, what it allows us to do.
You want people to update their priors on the internet? But you sweet man, you sweet innocent man.
I'm sorry, I'm old.
Okay, boomer, I think is the expression. Tim, well, so first of all, I do want to say this about Kiwior, right? Because like he's not just a tougher defender who can't play at all, right? There's that one moment where Gabriel gets beat in sort of a transition moment by Fofana, and Kiwior gets back and just rides him. Yep, exactly. Yeah. Rides him out. But he's intelligent enough to do that quick throw in to Kai that leads to the Kai goal, right? Everyone who plays for Mikel has to be intelligent, has to be switched on. And I think it says a lot about the culture of the club right now that a backup player in the 78th minute of a 4-0 game is alive to the idea to throw that ball in quickly and behind the defense, right, to create the 5th goal. That's a wonderful reminder of the standards, right, that are expected and demanded. But I want to ask you, I want to stay on this overload point, and then we'll get into some more of the game specifics, Odegaard's performance, individuals, the goals, all that fun stuff. But I think this right side overload is really interesting. I don't know that I've seen Saliba slide this far over. He was on the touchline at times, Rice dropping in. It gives Odegaard a really interesting role that I think requires tremendous game state intellect, when to come down into that deeper line and receive, and when to stay up and let White invert so that he can find space between the lines. But basically, I think what makes this work too is the intelligence of Kai and Trossard in their runs, because you overload massively on the right, and then Kai's runs were just routinely up against a single guy who couldn't track him. They couldn't figure it out. They couldn't slide enough resources over to the right side to cover what was going on over there and still track the runs of Trossard and Kai. So I'm curious what you think of that dynamic, because no one component of it can work, right? The right side overload is easy to shut down if the weak side players don't take up good spots and make intelligent runs. But the overload doesn't work if you don't have guys like Odegaard and White who understand where to drop in and make the next pass. There's one little video of White going around where he plays a line splitting pass between two defenders to Odegaard right at the top of the final third. These guys are all playing at a very, very high level right now. And I'm curious what you think of that specific tactical dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at that Havertz goal from the quick throw, that's exactly how we scored against Nottingham Forest. I think it was Zinchenko with a quick throw to Gabriel Jesus, so that's something they've clearly talked about. It kind of reminds me a bit of, do you remember we used to talk just after the COVID season about how sometimes you feel like Arteta needed those in-game water breaks, but probably because he didn't have the players who could, as Clive said, had these multifunctional players. He had to keep reminding them. Now it feels like we maybe need to go to Dubai every 3 months, just to not. Those water breaks were about principles in game, whereas I think these are a bit more sophisticated and over a longer period of time. But when I watched this game back, it was David Hillier on the co-commentary on Arsenal.com, and really, really good co-commentary, actually. He made a number of really interesting points about, particularly in the first half, that right side was right over next to Arteta, because they were talking about, sometimes it's White coming in, sometimes it's Odegaard dropping back, sometimes it's Rice going back. And Burnley, particularly because they play a bit of a 4-4-2 and were kind of underhanded in there anyway, just didn't know where it was going. But he made the point that Arteta was almost moving those chess pieces around because it was happening right next to the dugout. And I think there's just so much going on here in terms of, there are some players you ask to do different jobs and there are some that you don't. But this is the first time we've seen, for example, Gabriel be asked to be the central pin, Saliba to be the right pin. No problem. Both of them more than happy, more than good enough to do that. I think Lewis Ambrose on the Arsblog preview pod made this great point about Ben White, where he said, you generally these days get 3 types of fullback. The one that tucks in, like a centre-half, a bit like Kiwior's doing at left-back, the overlapper, or the Zinchenko like inverter. And he was saying Ben White is all three of those things. And sometimes he's all three of those things within the space of about 10 minutes. And, players like that are so key to this. And, this is the whole principle of positional football, right? You're playing areas, not positions, really. And one of the things, and all of a sudden, to your point about the overload, have you noticed how when Martinelli gets the ball, he doesn't have 5 players on him anymore? When Saka gets the ball, and what we've kind of done as well, clearly one of the things they looked at is the wide players are getting doubled up. And we talked about this before New Year. That surely means there's space somewhere else.
Yep.
And one of the things I was really looking for in the first half of the season that I don't think I saw, I was always excited by that Havertz Trossard kind of link up, overlay, whatever you want to call it, because I was looking at it thinking, like, these two, if you play them together, like, you probably couldn't pinpoint their position. And so we've got that kind of 3-10s model. Odegaard is more of a late arriver because sometimes he drops deep. But like between Havertz and Trossard, I mean, it doesn't really matter who the striker is out of those two. It's that they're both occupying those spaces. They're both drawing people out. That is giving space to the wingers. And it's just you're starting to see, I think, some of this more positional play. And I think Havertz made a really interesting comment after the game as well, where he said, I don't play in a position. He said, like, I'm more of a fluid kind of player, and maybe that took a little bit of time for both him and the team to figure out how that. I don't know this because I haven't looked, which is always great analysis. I reckon if you look at Havertz's heat maps when he starts left 8 and number 9, I bet they're pretty identical. It's just a point of when he arrives into that space. It's like, is he just standing there? Like when he's 9, he stands in that space and gets the ball. Or when he's 8, he arrives into that space a bit later. But when you've got Havertz and Trossard, they're kind of both doing both things at the same time. And it's just really making us unpredictable, fluid. It's not just get the ball out wide and hope Saka and Martinelli can beat 4 players. So I think there are a lot of tweaks that have happened. And to Clive's point, that happens when you've got malleable players. And we talked about this on the Thursday pod about how Arteta always seems to come up with solutions and tweaks. That's because he's got all these malleable players. And I can't wait to see what someone like Fabio Vieira can do, because at Porto, he was apparently playing 3 different positions in every game, and a bit like Bernardo Silva does for Man City. And it's all very exciting. And it feels like we've found a couple of players now in Havertz and Trossard to the point that all of a sudden now Gabriel Jesus is dispensable. Everyone wants to sell him now. We'll need him again. Don't worry about that. But it feels less like our entire fate rests on one player, and what we've got is a network.
Yeah, and I think the shame about performances like this, but it's natural, is you start writing the obituary for the players that didn't play. You know what I mean? Like, well, that's it. We don't need to use Zinchenko anymore. Gabriel Jesus isn't getting his job back.
No one wanted Trossard over Christmas anymore, did they? Like, and now look at him.
Right. Yeah. And so I think it's just a reminder that there's a group of players that I think are really close to the action. And those players are all going to contribute. One of the things I think is interesting from a data standpoint, Kiwior had 2 progressive passes in this game. He had 2 progressive passes against West Ham. Zinchenko averages 12 a game. Zinchenko's right there on shot creating actions with Trent Alexander-Arnold at like 3.27 a game or whatever it is. That's not to say that he should come in and take his job right back. It's just the point that we have different players who can do some excellent things and different things. I think there's no need to write an obituary. I think Gabriel Jesus is probably cursing his luck, because as great as Trossard has been, and he's been great, I think Jesus would have filled his boots in these games. You know what I mean? So it's just we should be praising the caliber of the players who have come in and played these games, rather than using it as an opportunity to write the obituary for the careers of the ones who haven't, because we're gonna need them. We're gonna need more than just the guys that were on this pitch for this game. But Clive, one guy that we need, when I think about where Arsenal are in relation to Liverpool and City, I see a team that plays better out of possession than either of those teams at this point. I look at the way Chelsea are able to counter on City, and I think we do a better job in our rest defense. Like, And I think we are a team that is more complete in the way we play. But what City and Liverpool have, City have Haaland and De Bruyne, Liverpool have Salah and Trent Alexander-Arnold. And to win big things, you need to be brilliantly coached, super talented, and then have those players that elevate the whole thing. And I think we're starting to see that from a couple of our players in Bukayo Saka and Martin Odegaard. Not to mention Saliba and all the other great players. But I want to focus on those guys for a minute. Let's start with Martin Odegaard. He's in unbelievable form. He has a multifaceted role, drops deep, but combines on the edge of the area. Wasn't subbed in this game. He's the one, he ran the most distance in this game. I'd be willing to bet he's run the most distance in the league, or if he hasn't, he's got to be close. His shooting technique is extraordinary. This is a 5-0 laugher, but in order for it to be a 5-0 laugher, you need that first goal where they don't have anything to hold on to anymore. And he gets it from next to nothing. By the way, Martinelli robbed of an assist. I hope we can test that one because I still don't understand why that assist was taken away from him. Beautiful outside of the boot, cut back. But what do you think of Odegaard, who I think, Martin Odegaard was asked about his improving form. He says, I think I've been playing great all season, just going in the net now, and the assists are coming. With all due respect to the man, I slightly disagree. I think he is playing better now, and I think that hip injury was probably something at the beginning of the season. But what do you make of the captain being given such a complex role and delivering so much for this team? I think he along with Saka are two main reasons we're elevating and hitting a new gear.
Yeah, I think he had a period when he wasn't fit and he was losing the ball, which he doesn't lose the ball. And so you knew then there was something wrong. When you say rest defense, I think the defensive transition is the phase we should be talking about, and unorganized defense.
That's the one I mean. Yes. Yeah. Can I just say one thing that's really interesting? So I always thought rest defense was when you don't have the ball and you're in your block. And then I saw a coaching video, and this is look, I still need to learn about football, but for those listening who want to know this also, what they said is rest defense is it comes from German, rest defense, blah, blah, blah. And it means the rest of your defense. In other words, when you're attacking, what is the rest of your team doing to maintain your defensive shape? So when you lose the ball, you're still in shape to defend. So I'm only saying that because I had to be educated on that, and I've been using it wrong. So I want everyone to understand that I am also going up a gear, like the team.
When you hear me use the word offensive distances, it's not just about how you attack and how the length of pass. It's so if you do lose the ball, what are your distances when you're attacking? Because then you're less liable to have anyone run through you if you're not so spread out.
Good point.
That's one way. So there's 4 phases: organized attack, organized defense, defensive transition, attacking transition. They underpin your game model, right? So the thing about Odegaard, and there's a great thread out there. EBL, was it EBL 2017? I urge you to read his thread today. It's perfectly written. He captures it perfectly in a language that everyone can understand. And he speaks about Odegaard. He speaks about him, how he shifts up and down the square and around that square. And I think there's room to grow on that square rotation, shall we say? There's room to grow. So in the build-up phase, he drops in and Ben White goes out. If he goes high, Ben White comes in. And so there's room to grow there. But what have we done? We've fixed potentially some of Declan Rice's weaknesses, if he has any. I know the data says he's had million progressive passes, but there's progressive passes and there's progressive passes. I'm not even looking at you. There's no look passes. Do you know what I mean? There's no look passes that got your name written on it and backspin. When the ball arrives, you can see the name on it, Nike. You know what I mean? You can see it. That's how good Odegaard is, right? So and so there's a different quality of pass, shall we say, when he's there. So we're now saving Declan's legs to be the absolute crowd you in. You're not getting out of there, bloke. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to win it. You stay where you are. The rest of the lads go and do the job. So I think he's really grown into that. And I do think there's been extra layers of rotation that have developed. And that's why we're seeing a bit more of him in more phases of the game. I think so rather than just wait till we get to the right pod, getting there, they defensively overload that, kick our legs off, we don't get a foul, we play a square pass, and they're running back towards our goal. That stopped. That was Arsenal last season. We still did that at the start of the season, but Declan Rice would stop it, you know. And if he didn't stop it, then we'd be in a bit of trouble, you know. So, and I always watched Thomas Partey's Arsenal, and if he didn't stop that transition, we were in trouble, you know. So we have developed on from that by how this is by how we attack has made it better for us to defend. You've got no chance of getting out of the stranglehold that we have on you, right? So I'm not sure to answer your question, Elliot, but I think the layers of rotation has given Odegaard the lift, mate, for me.
Yeah. And I think a great coach builds systems that maximize the best players. You know what I mean? If you're not getting the most out of your best players, then you have to look at the coach a little bit too. Because that's, I think, a coach's first job is I've got unique talents. How do I get the most out of them? And I think what we're doing right now, Mikel has come up with yet another little tweak to our overall game model that is allowing Odegaard to elevate and has gotten Saka into space where he can really go from what was a very high level to ascend back to that top table of world football. So I think Mikel deserves kudos for that. Yeah, Clive?
It was just adding on something you guys said earlier about there will be space somewhere else for somebody else. And what's happened is while we're all coming to the ball and rotating, there's one guy running away. And that's Kai Havertz. He's running away, running through. You can't not mark him. He's 6'4", galloping through your defense. You're going to let him go? You're going to ignore him like they used to ignore Lacazette? They're not going to ignore him, are they? And look how many times we gave him the ball, and from there we could play. Do you know what I mean? And so it is a collective thing, mate. It looks beautiful at the moment.
Did you hear what David Hillier said about him on commentary as well, which I thought was really interesting? He talked about the way that Havertz runs, and he said that, like, obviously David Hillier used to play with Ian Wright, right? So that's like the most natural frame of comparison for an attacker. But he said, I watch him and he's watching the defender, and as soon as the defender looks away, he runs.
He runs, yeah.
And I thought that's something I've not looked for before, but I'm going to look. He said, watch him. Every time he moves, it's because he can see the defenders looking at the ball.
Yeah,
we'll come on to Kai and Leo a little bit later on, but one thing I'll say, I'm so glad Kai got his goal. So the only reason I say that is so it didn't fall back into the hipster category of, oh, you know, he does all this important stuff. Like, there are some people that are going to say, where are his goals or assists, mate? Right? And he got a goal. He was doing so much good stuff, but he got a goal. So he gets that, the validation from that great performance. And I think sometimes you need that so that it's not just, oh, you know, if you watch the game, you see Kai, like he scored a goal.
Not least because his chant is literally contingent on him scoring a goal.
Yep. By the way, a lot of fun chants going up now. We only play in, what is it? We only play in empty stadiums or something like that. There's one like
Arsenal empty stadiums everywhere they go.
Yeah, that's right. Empty stadiums everywhere we go. And then there's obviously the who put the ball in the back of the net. Half the team did, except a little more explicit than that. The one thing I'll say about Odegaard too is I think it is such a joy to have a player that good who works that hard. All you have to do, by comparison, if you want to go to my Twitter account, and if you don't want to go to that platform, fine as well. But if you want to go to my Twitter account, you see I retweeted it. Look at the video of Marcus Rashford getting walked past. Literally just walked past against Luton. Standing in the right position, marking a guy, and he just watches him walk right around him. And it's disgraceful. I mean, I'm not trying to go all talk sport and like, oh, he's a disgrace, but it is disgraceful. It's unprofessional. And he's on $500,000 a week or whatever it is. That's a great example of like a superstar player with all the talent in the world, but something is broken in that relationship. And he's not switched on for them. So it makes me just appreciate more the commitment of the players we have. And I get why they're committed. They got something to fight for, but the caliber, the character of the players that we have. Martin Odegaard, one of our best players, our captain and our hardest worker, runs the most distance. You can't put a price on that. But let's talk about the other superstar, right? Salah and Alexander-Arnold at Liverpool and Haaland and Kevin De Bruyne at City. And I don't want to reduce it just to that because they have other great players and we do as well. But it's Saka and Odegaard right now for me at the heart of this thing. And Saka's form, going up again. The near post finish is excellent. Once again, he takes the responsibility of taking a penalty. Before we just start praising him endlessly, can I just ask you, what do you think of his penalty technique? Because I know that penalty taking is a lot just about courage and conviction, right? Versus just technique. If it's the penalty to win the Champions League final or, on the final game of the season to win the title, I'm still like, I feel like Odegaard strikes a ball cleaner. Like, what do you think of the penalty technique from Saka?
Yeah, it's very like Thierry Henry coded. I think it's because he always goes low.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, that's like logic behind it. But I think I feel like this as well. I feel safer with guys who just vary that up a bit, and who do. I know there's a lot of risk in going high, but like when Van Persie took a penalty, I thought this might go over, but the keeper's not saving it. That was what I thought. And like an Alan Shearer, and not even just those guys, but like, I guess to be fair, James Milner is one of the best penalty takers in Premier League history, and he always goes low, but he always hits the side netting, and same with Kane as well. Like those guys always hit like
with
side
pace,
netting.
side netting low. That's the unsavable one, right? I mean, like my bigger thing with Saka is I'd say it's not that he always goes low; it's that a lot of times I feel he goes like save height, like against West Ham, that's glove height. Between the keeper and the post. It's just that the keeper gets the wrong way. This one, at least, the keeper gets the right way, but it's low and it gets under him. So you'll take it. If they go in, they're good.
Yeah. And the keeper delays, and when he looks back, because the thing is, Saka, if you watch it back, Saka lifts his head and looks in that corner quite early in the penalty, and it gives Trafford, and Trafford's quite good on penalties. He's got a decent record, I think.
Yeah.
But you can see Trafford does that kind of shuffle of the feet, but he just delays a little, like half a second off his launching foot. And when he watches that back, he'll think, if I hadn't delayed there, I'd have got it, and he would have.
What do you make of the thing that we do sometimes, not every time, but we did this time, where Odegaard sets up to take the penalty and then walks away and gives it to Saka? I mean, everything at Arsenal feels coached and prepared, so I assume that that's a thing that they're doing for a reason. What do you think of that?
Yeah, like most teams kind of do that now. But I guess the thing is, because Odegaard has stepped up a few times, it puts genuine doubt in people's heads. Like Arsenal women got a penalty on Saturday, and Kim Little always takes them. And initially someone else picked the ball up, Leah Volti, who's never going to take a penalty in a million years. But they had this very funny moment where they realised that Man United weren't going to try and do any shenanigans anyway. They all just buggered off. So there was this very kind of weird moment where it was like, I guess I'll just give you the ball there. No one's falling for it and no one cares. But yeah, I guess like that's one of the only bit of this game I watched live was the last 20 minutes of the half. So I did see like the penalty live and everything, and it was a bit like, oh, is Odegaard? Like, it puts genuine doubt in your mind because they both do ostensibly step up from time to time.
I assume if Jorginho's on the pitch, he might still be the first choice penalty taker in a pressurized situation, just because he's a specialist at it. The other player that I sort of feel like in my head could probably be our best penalty taker if he wanted to be is Declan Rice, because the technique he hits the ball with and the power he hits the ball with. I have a feeling that if Declan Rice had to take an important penalty, even if it's not placed well, the ball and the keeper are going in the back of the net. So it's not going to matter. Stay with you for a second, though, because my bigger point was to praise Saka. First of all, one of the things he wasn't doing earlier in the season is he just wasn't using his weaker foot. He's starting to, and you saw him do it for his goal, well, one of his goals in this game. So he gets credit for that. And I know you appreciate that, Tim. But he's finally getting isolated a little bit more, and where we've created opportunities where he can get in behind. Odegaard is picking him out behind. Those triangles are back on the edge of the area where he's able to get in. I think Ben White being back to form and fitness is helping with that. But I do also just think Saka's was always playing at a good level, and now he's playing at an even better level. And you look at the output now, and it's just sort of hard to argue with him being anything other than one of the absolute best players in the league, along with Haaland and Salah. So what do you think of this new form he's hitting? And if there's anything structural about it, or if it's just that he's come back from Dubai, and to me seems burstier. He seems like that explosive first step is back. I don't know if that Achilles thing was a really major issue and was giving him a challenge, pushing off aggressively, but he looks bursty as hell right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that will be confidence as well. Like in that little 3-game streak, that there were points where the ball was coming to him on the back post on the right foot, and his technique had just gone. Like, he was taking it, but they were nearly going out the stadium. I remember one at Fulham and one in that Liverpool game, and I just feel like that it happened to the whole team, but his conviction and his confidence went in those scenarios, and it's just kind of come back. And what's interesting now is, after we went a long time without Odegaard assisting Saka for a goal, which kind of seems really weird, but now it's happened twice and in a very similar way. And actually, the way Odegaard has passed Saka the ball in the area is that kind of Ben White way, that kind of, I'm going to put it at this angle so that you come onto it on this side. And actually, that was an article I read around Christmas that was talking about, it was in the Athletic, it was one of their data guys, and I can't remember, it might have been Liam Tharm or someone, who was looking at the chances we'd created in those games and kind of saying, like, the chances were often falling on the wrong foot for the player or at the wrong angle. And I guess the irony in this goal is actually Odegaard does pass the ball to Saka on his left foot. And look, he still has 2 players on him. He just doesn't have 3 players on him. And he doesn't have 3 players on him by the touchline. It's in the penalty area. He's getting that Ben White pass from Odegaard, but he's getting it inside the box. And this time as well, it's very. He scored a goal like that at Leeds last season when we won 1-0. Very, very similar, albeit I think it was a crossfield ball, but he took it in exactly the same way, lashed it in the roof of the net with his right foot. I think he scored one against Everton like that as well last season. So we know he can do that. And like, clearly that is a major thing about being an attacker. You have to, particularly if you play wide, you are only going to get the ball at certain angles. You have to be able to use both feet, if only just to keep the guy in front of you guessing. And those Burnley defenders must have thought, I've done what I wanted in that situation. I didn't want to be in that situation, but I knew there was a good chance that Saka was going to get the ball on his left side in the area in this game. And my plan was probably to push him onto his right foot. Well, guess what? Doesn't matter. Like, they've ostensibly done their job, and he still found a way to just laser it in. And I'm sure that finish, the fact that we've seen it several times, what does that mean? That means that Saka is a guy who stays behind and works on that finish on his right foot. He knows that there are going to be several times in a season where that's going to happen, and he wants to make sure that he can do it. It reminds me of like an old Ian Wright quote about him working on his left foot, and he just said, I used to just smash the ball against the wall with my left foot. And the phrase he used that jumped out of me was, so when my instinct took over, my technique didn't let me down. And that's very instinctive from Saka. And it only becomes instinctive if you work on your weak foot. When you're afraid to go on your weak foot, you start twisting in and out and trying to get it. And whereas now, like, he's worked on it so much that in half a second, he can just go, okay, I'll just whack it on my right. And you know what? It doesn't have to be. Van Persie used to do this as well. Sometimes it is a bit of a swinger. Like, sometimes it's your standing leg, so you swing at it, and it's not technically the most aesthetic, but it doesn't matter. Get it in the net, get it in the roof of the net, and that's what he does. And that's because not just that this guy is immensely talented, it's because he works on things, because he understands wrinkles in his game, and he works his arse off to iron them out. And that, when you've got an elite talent who is also willing to do that, willing to do the stuff that a coach can't do for you, that's when you've got something special.
Yep. And I think it's fair to say we have something special. Clive, I want to move on, but I feel that if we move on and I don't give you a chance to talk about Bukayo Saka, that we'll have a fight in a bar somewhere in Porto, Portugal. So I want to avoid that.
Good.
Do you want to just add a nice coda on the Saka conversation? Because the Leo and Kai stuff, I think, is a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, we're good, really. Funny enough, the way Saka strikes the ball, I don't find it aesthetically pleasing. I think he kicks over and around the ball on occasions. And so I think if he's looking for, well, he's looking for developing, he could develop with his ball striking for me. You know, the goal he scored against Manchester United, the goal he scored against Nottingham Forest in the home game, that's in his locker more. He's got the ability to hit the ball from the edge of the area with power. When he's creating, he sort of kicks around the ball and over it, he spins it in, and it works for him. But on occasions, it can look a bit off. Fair enough, on his right foot, he's more pure sometimes on his right foot. And he did actually
Just
say,
laces through it.
yeah, on his interview, he said it's a finish that he's doing from a youth, and so he just brings it out of the bag, right? So so I think there's room there on his ball striking. Let's be honest, he's got everything, hasn't he? Really, but if he develops that,
19 goals and assists so far, and plenty of seasons still to play.
if he if he learns how to kick it, he might be half decent, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I think when he learns how to kick the ball, we're really going to have something. Well, look, I do want to talk about the role that Kai and Leo are playing, and I think where we go when some of the injured players start returning too is going to be an interesting debate and discussion, maybe even as soon as Wednesday for the Porto game, which we're going to preview as well. So we want to do all of that, obviously. But if we did that without making sure that you were properly groomed, then I wouldn't be doing my job. Part of being a community is looking out for one another. And if I'm not looking out for whether your privates are shaved, what am I even doing? Probably not getting arrested for with some kind of lewd and lascivious behavior. But let's talk about Manscaped. How are your New Year's resolutions going? That's what Manscaped wants to know. If one of your New Year's resolutions was to be better groomed, well, if you're not living up to it, this is how you do it. With the Manscaped products, and one of them is the MVP of 2024, most valuable player, most MVG, most valuable grooming tool. I don't know. Manscaped's 5th generation lawnmower. It's not just a trimmer. It's your grooming sidekick, equipped with 2 skin-safe blade heads, a standard one for taking a little off the top, and the new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. I do want to say I like this as an add-on because I think the lawnmower has always been the absolute best tool I've ever used for trimming. But if you want to go absolutely smooth, you need a foil blade. Right? So the foil blade is now there. Again, it's wet dry. You can use it in the shower. Look, here's the reality. Guys, gals, we shave. We shave our body. We shave down there. And most of the time we do it with a tool that sucks. It's been sitting in the shower forever, or you're doing it out of the shower, so there's hair everywhere. This is just the right tool for the job. And if you're going to do the job, you might as well have the right tool. And in addition to the right tool, by the way, longest battery life ever. I actually have 2 lawnmowers because when we very first started promoting them, they sent me one. And then I got the latest one. So I put that one in a drawer. I was cleaning out the drawers in my bathroom the other day, and I pushed the button on it, and it started. It's been in that drawer for like a year. So the battery life is just outrageous on that thing. They've also got, if you get the Performance Package 5.0, you're going to get the lawnmower. You get the Manscaped ears and nose trimmer, right, which is a really important thing. Look, certain age, you're going to need to do it. Nose hair especially, you don't want that. There's all their tonics and lotions and things like that. You get the Shed travel bag, the boxers that I always use for working out because they're really good in that area. So it's time to do it. Get 20% off and free shipping with code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. Embrace a new you and definitely embrace a new trimmer courtesy of Manscaped. 20% off and free shipping with code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. Do that now. And honestly, the product that we talk about that gets the most questions is NordVPN. So very, very simple. You put an app on your device, whatever device it is, phone, tablet, Mac, PC, makes no difference. You tap the country you want to browse in, and you're browsing there. That's how it works. And so if you want to watch Match of the Day, but you're not in England, or if you're over abroad and you want to watch all the games, like I can watch every game on NBC, but not when I'm out of the country. VPN, boom, you're back, you can watch. You want to watch Australian Netflix, boom, you're over there, you can watch it. It also has threat protection, by the way, so it prevents that malware and spyware from getting on your computer before it even starts. And given that we're all football supporters and we sometimes watch games on, let's just say, dodgy links, good to have that as well. And the package that they're offering right now is the best they've ever done with us. 4 bonus months. 4 bonus months. It's a third of a year. You'll be done with the season just during the bonus trial month period, whatever you want to call it. 30-day money-back guarantee, 4 bonus months. If you don't like it after 30 days, you can just cancel, forget the whole thing ever happened. Go to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. That's nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now, Clive. Is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Did it. We're gonna have to change your tagline if they don't get back on the train with us pretty soon. Yeah, it's gonna have to be.
We keep giving them free advertising, so why would they?
Yeah, that's a good point. So I know some podcasts have a no free advertising rule, but we have all free advertising. We just these brands aren't even paying us, by the way. It's just a labor of love, just a passion we have for private grooming and safe browsing.
Now I'm reminded of one of my favorite movie scenes ever, which is the Wayne's World. You know exactly the scene I mean, right? Where Garth's like head to toe in Reebok is like, it's like people only do things because they get paid.
Exactly. That's what I had in mind as well, by the way. Okay, enough of that. Clive, I'll stay with you for a second. You know, we've been linked with Osimhen, we've been linked with Ivan Toney, we've been linked with those types. And meanwhile, it's short king winter over here as our short king center forwards continue to bewitch and befuddle the opposition. Trossard at false 9, and we've scored 11 goals in 2 games. I don't want Ivan Toney and Victor Osimhen. I want more players that can do this. I love what we're doing right now, and I think don't look for a plan B for £100 million. Lean into plan A. Plan A is working. Explain to me how Leo Trossard has figured this out. Because I can go back a few years and think about Lacazette. And we'd complain that Lacazette, he links well, but he doesn't get back in the box. Like, what's the magic here? What is Trossard doing so well? And is it related to Kai? I mean, they alternate, they switch, they make runs. But how have they figured this out so that you can have the falseness of the 9 without giving up the box presence of an actual 9 that you need to score the goals?
Right. So, Havertz gives you the box presence, right? So we didn't have that last year. We had Granit Xhaka doing that job, but we all know that's when he goes into the box, he's really a left 6 that goes into the box because his manager's told him to. Do you know what I mean? And
you get in the box and like it.
And he's doing a fantastic job for the team, by the way, running around Martinelli to create overlaps. So he coach's dream, that player, doing something that he's obviously not really wired for. He's a progressive passer. He spends half the game ahead of the ball. And he just sacrificed himself. Big round of applause to him. Obviously, Havertz is not a progressive passer. He's a progressive mover. So you need to leave him space to run into. This is why I always bought the midfield thing. He's just a starting position. And where he ends up is in relation to his teammates. Now, Trossard his skill is, for me, is availability of his feet. He always makes sure one of my old phrases, Elliot, make sure you can see your boots. If you can see his boots, he can take the ball. When he takes the ball, he's got a couple of moves. He's got the old flexible hips. He's got a couple of moves to either move it on quickly, make sure he receives it on the angle. You hear me moan about Eddie sometimes, receiving it straight on. His first touch takes it back where the balls come from. If you receive it on the angle, you're half turning people. You're creating a move. To the angle you receive it at, you make sure you're on the opposite side. Receive it on the angle, bang. They can turn back into where the crowd scene is or turn out to isolations. It's very simple, but when you're a wise player, you know what to do. So his availability to show his boots is really, really crisp. I heard something today from our mate Tom. He said Trossard, and I really want Scott to dig into this. I think Trossard has started 10 games as our false 9. And we have won 9 and drawn 1. And the one we drew was Fulham when he came off at halftime. So I heard that from Tom. So I'm not sure if it's real, but Tom's pretty decent on this stuff. And so I do think there's something in what he gives us. So straight away when you see that, you think, this is who we are. Potentially with our other players, this is who we are. Now, when you buy a focal point centre forward, what you're really saying is, we've drawn or lost to West Ham. We could have done with someone in the box. Do you know what I mean? We could have done with someone in the box that day. We didn't have it for that game state. But what's the more sustainable game state? For me, it's collective rotational play. That's who we are. And the bodies and the shapes may change. The layers of rotation will change. But I think the Trossard movement of knowing when to drop, when to run in behind. Same for Havertz, on the piston. Remember that's the phrase I used to use, on the piston? One drop in, one drop. That's their relationship. And it really works for me. He's pleasing on the eye. I know of him, by the way. He knows how to kick the ball. Left foot,
I was going to say that when you were talking about Saka.
Yeah, he knows how to kick it. He really does. And he could have had a hat-trick in this game. Easy. He missed one where the air kicked it when Saka played it across. That's a goal. That's a goal for him. Right?
It would have been a beauty, by the way.
Would have been a beauty. And when Martinelli sat on his arse and flicked it over his head and it dropped to him, he sort of lashed out on his left foot. And when he scored, he was angry because he knows he should have had 2 or 3 in this game. So he scored angry. And so while he's messing up, we still score 5. I think he's a wonderful player. And well, we don't have a problem. We have a really strong solution, don't we, in that position?
Yeah, we really, really do. And I think, well, let me ask the more gossipy question, then we can get into the more deep tactical stuff that's the ArsenalVision podcast does. But come on, we can have a little fun here. Tim, let's say Gabriel Jesus plays 20 minutes against Porto in midweek, and then it's Newcastle at home and he's fit and he's firing.
Mm.
Who are you picking?
I think that is when you start considering your options a bit more like a toolbox, and you say, what does this team that we're playing, what would they struggle with the most? Because I do think there is something. I think we've always said, most people have always said that they think this is Trossard's best position. It's definitely where he's played the best, I think, for the longest. And it's kind of weird because he does a lot of that Jesus stuff, right? He just doesn't look like he's moving quite as fast when he does it. And I do wonder if there is something in him. Like if I was Jesus watching Trossard at the moment, I'd probably say to myself, do you know what? Maybe I don't need to go where Havertz is. Maybe I can leave that area alone and I can come over to this side. So rather than trying to be like the Tasmanian devil, and this feels so weird criticising this because this is the play that, to quote Arteta, changed our world. But instead of me trying to be the guy in every position across the front line, maybe I can just leave some of that to Havertz, and maybe there can be some interchange, and that would be what I'd look at. But honestly, I'd have to look more closely at how Newcastle play, how they defend. Do they drop off? Do they defend zonally? I'm not sure I know the answer to that at the moment, but if I were Arteta, that's how I'd look at it. I'd look at it as which guy is likely to hurt this particular team.
Clive?
I think it's a huge week, by the way, and we've had this team for 2 weeks in a row, so we've all burned it in our brains. Maybe this is the team. It soon won't be, because we've got Newcastle on Saturday night, and so I don't know if there's anything in this, but I thought Martin was brilliant on Saturday, but didn't he play the full 90 in this game? And you can't take everybody off. I understand. That made me think he could be being saved for Saturday night, because Saturday night is a night we're going to need some energy. Because I don't care who you are, Champions League in the week, you're playing that emotional game. Saturday night, 8:00, you're the last game after City have played Brentford on Tuesday. Liverpool play Luton on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've got a game before we play on Saturday. So we need to hold our nerve and make sure we've got energy.
The Emirates will give them a lot of energy, that's for sure. That Emirates is going to be absolutely fucking rocking. I cannot wait.
We need to hold our nerve. We need to lift our level of intensity for Saturday night, 8:00. Well, we're going to look at the table. We're going to be a bit behind. City dropped points last game. They were the last game of the 3 of us. They dropped their 2 points. It means something. This Saturday night game is huge, as well as Porto is. But this Saturday night one, if we get this one done, I think we're in a really good spot for the next upcoming games pre-international break. So how he manages our energy, even though we are thinking we really like this team, but we're going to need some fresh people for Saturday night.
Yeah, and just to build on that, like you've said, the team for the last 2 games has been the team. Some of that I think is because no one really came back from injury as well, so it kind of had to be. But also, it is not going to be the team for the next 2 games. It can't be. There are going to be some changes, and for all all the garlands with Trossard and everything, and fully deserved. 2 weeks ago, we were saying that about Jorginho, weren't we? 2 weeks ago, we were all giving, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have been, and that wasn't right, but we were all giving Jorginho a new 3-year contract in our heads. He hasn't played since. Well, he's come on as a sub, but that's because some games are for him, some games will be for Trossard, etc., etc.
There are people saying Kiwior has locked down the left back spot. I want to be clear. He's been brilliant, but we are very, very quick to analyze football based on the last thing we saw.
Mhm.
And I think if Mikel has shown anything, he has this wonderful ability to see what's happening in the moment and make changes, but also stay zoomed out enough to see his whole squad and understand it. The idea that there were people a month ago saying, why did we sign Kiwior? Right? 2 months ago saying, has Trossard actually been a good signing? Can't play left wing. What are we doing? It's just...
But this happens in the City squad as well, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
lose and find players all the time. There'll be a player and they'll be on the bench for 2 months. Like, it's Grealish at the moment, and everyone's going, "Is Grealish?" I bet you 100. Well, I don't actually bet you £100, but I bet anyone Grealish comes back into that team at some point and is an important player. That's just how they do things to stay fresh.
Well, and let me say this about Jesus, and this is not a knock on Trossard, so please don't take it that way. I don't think there's anything Trossard does better than Jesus, with one important exception: take his chances.
Yeah.
Trossard is historically a goals more than XG player. He outperforms his XG. Jesus substantially underperforms his XG historically, season on, season on. The fact of the matter is, Jesus needs more chances to score a goal than Trossard does, and you don't always get them. And so the question is, I think Jesus is a little better at pressing. I think he's a little better at beating a man off the dribble. I think he's a little better at hold-up play and taking the ball down. I think he's a little better with his defensive intensity. I think he's a little better with his final third passing, and his assists and expected assists this season show that. But he doesn't take his chances as well. And ultimately, if you stick the ball in the back of the net, it's the single most important thing you can do in football. And so I think right now Trossard has earned the right to keep playing in that position. But to both of your points, if we're going to play every 3 days, it's great to have both. Now, what I will say is I wouldn't... You can't bring Jesus in to start against Porto having not played, right?
Mhm.
But if he can get 20 minutes in midweek, then he's in line to start against Newcastle.
Yeah.
If similarly, look, any of these guys, if Tomiyasu or Zinchenko or Partey, remember him, or Jesus get minutes in midweek, they're in the frame to be a part, to be a bigger part against Newcastle. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think there's also a slight intangible here as well, in that we kind of need an adult in the team somewhere. So it was Jorginho a couple of weeks ago, and now it's kind of Trossard. I kind of put Jesus into that class as well, and Arteta certainly. I know he's roughly the same age as the rest of the group, but I think Arteta puts him more in that Xhaka, Jorginho, Trossard, because of the amount of stuff he's won and everything like that. Like, I think there is something maybe for that technical controlling presence as well, whether it's Trossard higher up the pitch or Jorginho lower. But I kind of think that Arteta likes having a 30-year-old in the starting lineup as well.
Yeah, and I look, Trossard had a brilliant game. He wins the penalty. He scores a beautiful goal that he takes. Is it first time? I want to say it's first time. It's near Kai. Kai can't get to it. He takes it on first time. I love Kai's role too. So Kai had a weird game, Clive, because this could have been a supernova game. This could have been 3 goals, 2 assists. His touch did let him down a couple of times in big moments, just a few times. And I think if we're going to be even keeled and not just praise everybody, his touch let him down a few times. But the 1-2-3 played Odegaard to Kai to Trossard for the penalty is brilliant. The way he takes his goal is lovely. He nutmegs a guy in the box. That's impudent, right? And takes the finishes well to get his goal. He got in once and it fell to Saka, and the cutback didn't find anyone. I think that was the Trossard air shot. This was a really good Kai game that was a couple of better touches away from being an outrageous Kai game. But I'm curious how he's doing it. It's a really interesting role, Clive. It's evolved so much, that position. It swaps with the center forward. It's not a 6, but it's not purely an 8. It's not a 9. Can you help me sort of see the role? Because I don't... Some of his runs in this game were just fantastic. Burnley had no idea where he was coming from. No ability to track him at all.
Yeah, so he doesn't have one role. He has many roles. Right, so let's go through a few that I've just seen for a while. So, in the goalkeeper's hands, the opposition goalkeeper's hands, where does he stand? next to Declan Rice. Protects the defence in the air if they're going long. Right? So as soon as we have the ball, what's he doing? He's jogging forward slowly. Doesn't want to arrive too soon. See if he needs to be involved in build-up. If Trossard and Odegaard goes deep, I need to be on the last line. Don't think about it. Off I go to the last line. Because if we're recycling the ball, the team needs to see a focal point. So I'm now the focal point. Right? If we're transitioning defensively, I'd get back in and win the ball defensively. If they want me in the front two press, I can be a part of the front two press. No problem at all. I can do that. If I need to empty out midfield and go to the left side because Martin Odegaard's dropped into lane 3 and lane 4, I can do that too. And be a bounce pass out wide and then travel from the side. He can do all the roles. And when you got a player that can do all the roles, that wins all of the duels as well, that's the key thing. There's a little clip going around that he was involved in every single goal at the weekend. And I think the label of the tweet was the butterfly effect that he had. Every single goal he had an action in it. But if you take the Trossard goal, for example, I think he wins the first ball, progresses it out left. He runs into the box. I think Kiwior crosses it. He has a bad touch, waves his foot at the ball, which then rebounds to Trossard, and Trossard slots it. Now, he was doing that early in the year, but the defender was clearing it. He hadn't had his goals and assists. And everyone's going, Havertz, he's rubbish. And the manager has to all say he has to improve his last action, etc., etc. Now we can see a little bit more relationships and we're seeing more end product. Suddenly we can see the player really clearly. But he'd been doing this for a while, from not always as crisp, not always as clean, not always with the same confidence and aggression and assertiveness, but the roles have been developing throughout the season. Now he has relationships which just take time to build. And but through the relationships, his roles have become clearer. So, mate, there's not many people that play like, you tell me. Granit Xhaka, everyone loved him, right? He was a left 6 for 5 years. We moved him to be a left 8 for one season where he's up and down a railway track for the whole game, right? So that role, just take that role, what he did, and then look at what Havertz, how many roles that Havertz is doing at 24 years of age, younger than Eddie Nketiah. Look at what we got here, potentially, if we use it correctly and develop him and he gets better, etc. So, yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
It's interesting, right? Because one of the criticisms leveled at Kai is he doesn't have a role. No one knows what he is. What is he? And Mikel took that that uncertainty, that criticism, and turned it into a strength. We'll just give him multiple roles. Instead of seeing it as, we don't know if he's a 9 or an 8 or we don't know what he is, Mikel said, that's great because I want him to be all those things. And I think he can. And he's showing he can. It's I think it's interesting vision from Mikel. And look, I don't want to go too far. I don't want to be the person who's squinting to see things. But I think at this point, if you can't see the importance of his contribution, then maybe you're anchoring a little bit, to biases. Not saying, again, the problem is he came from Chelsea. He was 65 million. He's one of our top earners. And all of those facts mean people want to see something outrageous from him. They want to see something elevating from him. But we are a collective and we play a very complex system where if one person isn't standing in the right place, the other players don't look as good. So I can respect what he's provided and recognize that some people might still want more from him. I still want more from him. I want 50 goals from all our players. So, once we hit that, I think we're going to be quite good. But it's a great role. And it's an interesting luxury to have with him because I think it allows you to play a guy like Leo at 9 and still have a guy who can win aerial duels and hold the ball up in your team playing a hybrid role. It gives you a lot of flexibility. But I think some of his runs, like I said, if his touch was a little cleaner in this game, this is a supernova game. As it turns out, it's just a really, really good game. And by the way, I don't think Mikel gasses up his players. You know what I mean? I don't think he's a guy who praises players he doesn't genuinely believe deserve it. Look at some of the ways he talked about Smith Rowe for years and how that evolved. He wanted more from him, and that was clear in his messaging about him. He said, I love this player about Kai. I love him. When he once upon a time said that about Martinelli, remember when people were like, he doesn't want to play Martinelli, he doesn't love him. He said, I promise I love him more than you. And what did he go on to do? Start him in every damn game. I think when he praises players to that level, you can believe him. And I think he believes it about Kai, and he's looking very, very important for us. So that is a good thing. A couple quick hits here, Tim. I think one of the hardest things to do is praise a player who's come in and played well without anointing them. He says, having just anointed Kai, I get it. But Kiwior, like, I think Kiwior is a classic example of what you want from a squad. A guy who can play a couple different roles, coming in, playing his role well, keeping a winning streak going, contributing in a couple important moments with some defensive interventions. I already mentioned the intelligence of the throw in. I don't need to anoint him. I don't need to answer the question of, is he ahead of Tomiyasu? Is he ahead of Zinchenko? I just need to appreciate him. And I think that that's a fine line to walk sometimes, right? Because it's like in relationships, right? You start dating someone and people are like, when are you guys going to move in? You move in. When are you guys going to get engaged? Get engaged. When are you going to get married? When are you going to have a baby, right? Like, we do that with players. They start a game. He was good. Has he become the starter? Should he play for his country? You know, like, you immediately go on and on and on. I mean, I think that's how Carl Jenkinson got a cap. So what do you think of Kiwior from a level-headed standpoint, how he's playing, and whether there's, you know, that next layer of analysis in terms of his place in the pecking order?
Yeah, there could well be. I just wanted to add very quickly on Havertz. I think Clive nailed it with the sentence, he wins the first ball. I think that's a big part of what he's there to do, whether he plays up front or left eight. On Kiwior, like, this is, so usually, right, when a player comes in and we asked him to do the Zinchenko role and initially, and that for me is Arteta's fault, because here's what I will say about Zinchenko, and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. I do understand the frustrations that people have with him. I do. I get it. I see it myself. I think we're guilty of not understanding the difficulty of what we ask him to do. We ask him to play two positions at the same time at the very top level of the game.
Can I interrupt you for a second? Just to back up your point. You know who explained how difficult that job is recently?
Kieran Tierney.
Kieran Tierney, exactly. Yeah. Yep, who said, I couldn't do it.
And he's really good. And like, there's a reason not many guys, like, look around, there are not many guys doing that. I'm sure every manager would love an inverting fullback that like that to that degree, right? But like, I can't name many others that are doing it because it's so hard. And incidentally, dropping Odegaard a bit deeper, as well as helping us, like, with some of that influence we're used to getting from him. I think Arsenal column tweeted that Odegaard was averaging 45 touches a game earlier this season. He has 107 in this. That's because he's swallowing up a lot of Zinchenko touches. So when I say Kiwior, because usually if you bring a player in and you're like, oh, this player needs protecting, that's usually because they're not very good. And sometimes you do have to adapt and go, okay, we need to throw a blanket around this guy. We need to protect him. We need to bring someone back or something like that. I don't think that's the case with Kiwior. I think it's just, I don't think Tomiyasu can play that role either, quite frankly, which is not a slight on Tomiyasu. That's just not who he is. Like I said, I just like Ben White's doing it pretty well. How if we ask Ben White to do that for 2 seasons, I'd say let's see. But yeah, so like, I don't think this is a slight on Kiwior at all, that we've switched things around a little bit and put him in a position to succeed a little bit more. Because what have we bought? We've bought a left-sided centre-back who can play left-back, right? Zinchenko, totally different profile. Zinchenko is a midfielder. We ask to sometimes go to left-back. Kiwior is a defender, first and foremost. And so now we've kind of just slid things over. And that really, really suits him. Like, again, this is positional football, right? That's his role. That's his area, the left side of the defence, whether that's, you know, between the kind of, I guess, between the penalty spot roughly, but between like, I guess that left back area, between the corner of the area and the touchline, that's the area we want him in, really. And you can see, you mentioned it earlier, Elliot, when he makes a great he sees the ball out of play as well, doesn't he, over Fofana, and Gabriel comes over and gives him the sort of high five that would have broken a lesser man's arm, I think when Gabriel gives you a high five, If he did that to one of us, that would be a visit to A&E.
Cortisone shot in the shoulder for sure.
Yeah, exactly. But like even just having that, because it's always been like Gabriel and Saliba, right? And sometimes they really do like go eye to eye. And so like for Kiwior to fit into that kind of unit, I think is really, really good. And we've just found the player, not because we're protecting him because he's not a good player. We're just magnifying the attributes that make him the player that we bought, the player that we identified when we got him. And yeah, absolutely. Like there is, again, with these players, with your quote unquote backup players, although I'm uncomfortable with that, particularly as our squad is getting better, the best thing that can happen is that nobody talks about them, whether that's the fans. I bet Burnley didn't talk about him much. I bet Burnley didn't go target him. I think Fulham did a little bit because we were asking him to do something else. I bet Vincent Kompany didn't have a big red ring around him before this game.
And that's good enough. I mean, the reality is, too, we just control games to such a degree. We dominate them, but we control them also. I mean, from the 50th minute to the 81st minute, Burnley had no shot. It's 31 minutes in the middle of the game where they didn't even shoot. If you can do that to a team, it's demoralizing, first of all, but it is such an interesting way to watch football. I feel I've had to learn football more to appreciate Arsenal the last couple of seasons, to see what we're doing and see how we're doing it. And I would imagine that's sort of the journey that City fans had to go on with Pep Guardiola to some extent, to understand the collective component of it, because it's easy to watch an individual. The collective's a little higher, and I want to get to one other part of that collective. But Clive, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I got to get this out of my head, mate, because I did watch the Luton game yesterday, Manchester United, and I think if you want to know Arsenal's journey, look at Manchester United and look at how they're forced to play. So why are they forced to play that deep? They've got no one who can look after the ball back there. Their central defenders are not quick enough to go long, to play on the halfway line. Harry Maguire can't stand there. So they've got to play deep. Their fullbacks don't really want the ball. Luke Shaw wants it on the run. He doesn't want it standing still in build-up play. So they're forced to play deep, counter-attacking football. Manchester United versus Little Luton. Right, so Luton's build-up structure was way better. Their central defenders wanted the ball. They've got Ross Barkley and Sambi Lokonga in the midfield, who want the ball on the turn. Don't mind seeing it they can't see their opponent because they turn the right way. And Luton's build-up was what Manchester United should have. Sometimes you're forced to play a way which doesn't allow you to develop your control. When we had to introduce a centre-back last season, it wasn't just a change in player and quality. It was where we could hold our line height changed. Our line height exposed a lack of running power of our two centre mids, who we criticised heavily at the time, particularly one, right? And because the distances front to back had changed. And so it's all interlinked. It's all interlinked. And we're very fortunate right now that we can see the manager's game plan because we have the players to do exactly what he wants in game. It's really beautiful.
And one of those players, Clive, is David Raya. I think I read now that he leads the league in clean sheets. But let's not get it twisted. He faced no shots on target. So it's not the shot stopping. He certainly claims crosses brilliantly. I think that's been a big thing for us. When we got him, my presumption was, we want a keeper who's better with the ball at his feet. And I think that's a part of it. But what's interesting is he still launches it quite a bit. He's just better at that. He's better at that. And the quick throw-ins, in this game, he played 22 passes sort of short and middle, right? He was 22 of 22, so we completed them all. But he launched the ball 12 times. He has a higher launch percentage, I think, than Ramsdale actually did. It's just that he's good at it. He's more accurate with his launches. They don't tend to come back. Not to say that Ramsdale was terrible at it, but I just think if you look at Raya at Brentford wasn't going short. He was going long. He was really good at going long. They ruined us going long to Tony from Raya, right? When we played them. I think the best thing I can say about David Raya is It stopped being a debate. And I know we've said that, and so I don't want to be redundant. I don't think it needs a lot of discussion, but Clive, I think when he first arrived, he's come up to a big club, from a much smaller club with no disrespect intended to Brentford, into a situation with an extremely popular incumbent that everybody really wanted to see keep the job, including maybe the players. And he looked rattled early on. Now the job is his. The team has coalesced around him. I think the fan base, if they haven't coalesced around him, certainly they've accepted him. And I think what you're seeing now is what the vision was. Maybe it took a little while to get here, but do you feel now that we're sort of through that initial rocky period that you could see what the vision was? Because I know, for example, you were clear. You weren't totally sold on this move from an emotional standpoint. You were worried that we had taken a risk emotionally that we didn't need to take. But I think we're at a point now where it's bearing fruit.
Yeah, it's down to him as well. For me, I didn't like. You often hear me say the words. It's important how you walk into a room. If you have clarity in how you walk into a room, people can understand you and accept you a bit more. So Declan Rice walked into the room.
First thing I do, I walk into the room, I fart. I want everyone to know I'm there. I want people to know I'm taking this room over. You like dogs will spray sometimes, right? Like mark your territory. Get in a room, do something. Mark. Sorry, that I don't know why I had to say that. I wish I had.
You carry on.
Please carry on.
But like Declan Rice came into Arsenal. Thomas Partey injured. Declan Rice's role is absolutely clear. Let's just watch him do what he does. Oh, okay, that's what he does. Wonderful. What does he do really, really well? Okay, basically stop everybody. And maybe we have a bit of a dig at him for not passing the ball around corners. That's basically it, right? But his role was pretty clear. Havertz, what does he do? What we bought him for? We need a striker. He's not a striker. He's not a midfielder. Lack of clarity, problem. Timber, we lost. Raya comes in. We don't need a keeper. We like our keeper. He's just won the PFA goalkeeper of the season. Why are we buying him? Watch him in some of the early games. Like, okay, he's all right. But then he looked a bit edgy himself. So then that gives you a little bit more credence to say, well, did we really need to do it, particularly when we're drawing games and every shot's going past him? But from a football principles point of view, we could all see very quickly it's like having an extra player on the pitch. And that's it. We now have an extra footballer on the pitch. And in a game where you're looking for the spare man most of the time, he makes that spare man job look a lot easier, right? It's never about length of kicking me, Elliot. You know my view on that. It's about making sure we have a spare man and we move the ball quickly to people in space so they can move the ball quickly up the staircase into the front five as quickly as possible. You can go there one-on-one. If Kai Havertz is standing on a 4-foot fullback, mate, I want you to go along to him. Don't ignore it because it's a long pass. Go along to him. That's where the advantage is. So for me, he looks like I'm the number one now since Dubai. Get used to it. I ain't apologizing. I'm the daddy. And he looks really, really good for us. Really good. And again, when you have somebody in your team that can't look after the ball, the opposition will press them. And at the moment when you're watching Arsenal, everyone can look after the ball. And so where do they go? Even our goalkeeper, don't go and do him. If you overpress him, you're in trouble because you'll move it out of the spot and then we're going to get an overload. So principles-wise, it works, mate. And emotionally, he's connecting with more and more people. It's clear for everyone to see.
I'd also say with Dubai, we've got to remember that Raya didn't have pre-season with Arsenal. He came in like 4 or 5 games in. That was probably his pre-season, Dubai. So obviously he's played enough games now, but there's a bit more, particularly when you've got a goalkeeper that's a footballer as well. That connection to teammates matters.
Yeah. So, Tim, can we do one thing quick before we get to a very, very quick Porto preview? We might try to do something on the Patreon tomorrow specific to Porto, and we'll do some stuff out in Portugal as well. But there was a lot of frustration before kickoff directed, I think, towards the injured players. I think this is really hard as a fan. It's hard to accept that players don't want to be injured. You know what I mean? Like, Tomiyasu doesn't want to be injured. Jesus doesn't want to be injured. Thomas Partey, Zinchenko. They don't want to be injured. But when it's the same players again and again, it's just impossible not to be frustrated, especially like with Tomiyasu, where he got eased into the Asia Cup to the point where he's finally playing 90 minutes. And you see guys like Matoma back playing, right? Other guys who played for Japan who are back and playing, and Tomiyasu who played in the Asia Cup, not playing for Arsenal. So this stuff happens. But we need these players, and we need to accept that they are an important part of what we're going to achieve this season, because the 11 we put out the last 2 games was good enough to win, and it might be good enough to win most games. But it's that 11. There's not a lot left in reserve, and we need that bigger group. What's your take on where we're at with that group that's been out and reinserting them, and to the extent that we will give any of them or all of them back sort of a primary place, a priority place in the team? What and maybe if you could just a little bit on the inevitable frustration people feel towards injured players, even though it is certainly not their fault that they're injured.
Yeah. Of course, I understand that, and I understand it when it's the same names. I do think there's maybe something with Zinchenko and Jesus, where they came from a club where they weren't playing 90 minutes every game, and maybe there's an adjustment there for both of them. Obviously, Tomiyasu's a frustration and all of that. But on this occasion, and like I can't back this up with anything, it's only a theory, I wonder how injured they actually are. And I wonder how much of a symptom this is of having a slightly better squad, that you can hold them back and say, do you know what? Jesus, I wouldn't mind betting he was in a condition to play on Saturday. But what they're looking at is, I don't want him going down again in March. I don't want Tomiyasu going down again in March. And so it's probably circular as well, because it's players who get repeat injuries. And one of the reasons, certainly you look early on with Thomas Partey, not so much now, early on with Tomiyasu, we kept bringing them back and losing them again because they were so important, because our squad was so much smaller. Whereas I do suspect there's something in now. Okay, we're playing well at the moment. It's all right. We don't have to kill them. We want these guys in April. If we go through in the Champions League, if we're in the semi-final, we're going to be playing every 3 days after that March international break. We're about to go into that period anyway. We're coming into the Champions League knockouts. I wouldn't mind betting that some of these players are about 80 to 90% fit. And in the past, that would have meant you're in. But at the moment, it's, you know what? Let's just leave it until you're actually 100%, so that we don't go into the last month of the season with 12 players again.
Yeah. So I think we leave it there for this game for the moment. Absolutely brilliant. I think we look so good. I mean, if you just take the names off the club crests, you stop thinking about, the name on the shirt and the history. Is anyone better than Arsenal right now? Is anyone playing better football than Arsenal at both ends of the pitch? Is anyone restricting the opposition the way we do? If you care about the advanced metrics, we're number 1 in expected goals allowed. We're also number 1 in goals allowed, by the way. So, that matters. But we've crept up in the expected goals for now. We're number 2 ahead of City, granted with a game in hand, just behind Liverpool. Our goal difference is top. We just look really, really good. And I'm just curious, Clive, super quick. Chelsea were able to get something from Manchester City. I think City are very, very good, obviously, and they're probably favorites just because they've done it so often. But the one thing I do see is, look, City should have won that game. They had the chances to win that game. Haaland missed some chances you don't expect him to miss. That happens. But the thing I did see is that Chelsea were able to get in behind them. They were able to turn them around and create transition opportunities on them. Does City look maybe slightly just a little more vulnerable in that respect than you've seen in the past? Is there something there? I mean, if Chelsea can go to City and come away with a result, it can be done. And we're going to need to do it if we want to win a title. So did you have any quick takeaways from that game?
Yeah, so I think when you defend and you want to control people into their space, you have to go a little bit man to man. And when you win the ball back as your team, you heard me with my shout, you got to get your first 2 passes off. On the 2 or 3 transitions that I saw, they went into Nicholas Jackson, who then was able to hold it and move it on. And when they got the first 2 passes in and got out, they've got the speed with Sterling and Jackson and Cole Palmer. They've got the speed to really run them backwards and challenge them. And so that's Pep, he came up with the inverted fullbacks. Why did he do that? Because he wanted to stop defensive transitions. Rather than fullbacks staying there picking their nose redundant, I use them inside, use their one-on-one ability to stop people running through our team. So that's what he did. And so his whole philosophy is about not allowing you to transition against them. And they were able to get out with Jackson and a couple of times that I saw in the highlights. So that's the main reason. And they've got the speed of play of players, real pacey players, to make City think. Now, we've got the speed to do it. And by the way, Porto have a similar way of playing where you have two wide men that stay wide. We can need fresh fullbacks that are happy one-on-one. They're going to split us wide with our defenders. So I think it's going to be very much a fullback day versus wingers day from both sides. So yeah, City, for me, stay with them at this moment in time and test their aura. You've got to stay with them. If you don't win your games, you can't test how good they are. If you don't think the aura team of a league can lose if you put them under pressure, just look at what's happening in Germany right now. 11 titles in a row. The pressure of winning games have made them think about how they're playing. And they're under pressure, about to change their manager, and our problems come up. If you don't win your games, you can't test their mettle. Not even the pundits can talk it away. If you're winning your games, you put them under pressure. I want to see City under pressure. I want to see us go there and put them under pressure.
The only thing I have to slightly disagree with you, and I hate to disagree with you. The reason Bayern are going through what they're going through is because they brought Spurs players into the fold. That's the reason. Once you have trophy dodgers in your team, you're done.
I let you have that one.
Thank you. Layup. All right, last little bit. Porto. They got through their group by taking care of business against the non-Barcelona sides. Lost to Barcelona twice in competitive fixtures, I should say. Beat Shakhtar twice, beat Antwerp heavily twice. They're not good in the Primera division this season. They're third. Their numbers aren't great. They're quite a distance behind Benfica and Sporting. According to Adam Rayvogue, who mentioned this on Twitter to me, they're a high pressing kind of team. So they like to high press, do that sort of thing. I just think the problem is when a team of lower quality tries to press Arsenal, we've seen what happens there. Every team that's tried to do that to us has gotten crushed, especially in the Champions League. PSV tried it a little bit, and they got monstered. So any thoughts on how you might want to set up for this? If Porto are going to try to press a little bit, Tim, my only thought is maybe it is a chance to bring Jorginho back into midfield and really have those technicians in the middle field to get past their press. And if, as Adam describes it, if that's how they're going to play, all I can think of is Martinelli, eat, feast, have a day. Because we know when teams do that, that's when he looks generational. So how would you line up for this and what do you expect to see?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable shout about Jorginho as well, not least because, Champions League knockouts, at this stage, you really have to respect the opposition, the level of opposition. You have to respect that you're moving into two-legged tie territory. This time, I know it's very different because it was the Europa League and we were trying to win it at 70%. But this time last year, we got Sporting over two legs. And, if you're not fully on it, those teams continue. Sporting score one from the halfway line and all of a sudden we're out. That can happen to you at this stage of the competition. And these are, I appreciate Porto aren't doing as well as they usually do in the league, but at home as well, these teams, they're used to winning. Look at the Lens games in the group stage. 6-0 at home, absolutely no problem. But away, they gave us a bloody nose, and that's what you've got to be careful of. And you've got to at least start these games, first 15, 20 minutes, really respect the opposition, respect the fact that a lot of the players that we're going to be playing haven't played a Champions League knockout game before, haven't played like that over two legs, and we don't have the kind of record under this manager to really feel breezy about that. But clearly, I think if we play our football to the standard that we can, then yeah. But really, I think in these ties, particularly when you're away first, which I think is an advantage even without away goals, very, very much quieten the crowd. This is a crowd who are used to seeing their team win at home. Get them nice and quiet. Then impose yourself on the game and don't let it get away from you. That's a lesson I think we had to learn from that Lens game in the group stage, and Sevilla as well, because we were crushing them and then we let them get a goal back. And then the last 20 minutes, we all lost some hair. And Clive had an afro before that game, as he might say himself. That last 20 minutes became very dicey of a game that we were absolutely bossing. So, these away games in particular, I think this is very much a be professional, take care of business. Like even City, generally speaking, don't go away from home in the Champions League and smash teams 5-6-0. They do that at home more often, but they go away. They did that in Copenhagen last week. Guardiola's message before that game, what did he say? He said, "I've got a feeling in my gut this is going to be a really, really hard game." He didn't take any chances with the starting lineup. He rested players in the Premier League to respect Copenhagen. And I do kind of think there is something in European knockout competition where the temperature kind of changes a little bit on you. And so Arsenal have to really respect that. But if we brought Jorginho in, great, because that's another adult in the team, as it were, someone who really has played in these games very, very often and, could potentially be one of those quieten the crowd down, don't give them the ball, don't give them hope, don't let them transition on you because they're going to try and do that, like you said, very high up. Let's take their hope away in the first 15, 20 minutes and then I think your quality can tell. And that's the mark of a mature team. And I think we're about to see over this tie how much more mature Arsenal are compared to this time last year.
Yeah, and if you want to take anything away from the substitutions at the weekend, Trossard subbed off at 69 minutes. Kai was left on, I believe, the whole game. To me, that says we might. Was Kai not left on the whole game?
No, Smith Rowe came on for him.
In the 84th minute. Sorry, so Kai did come off. I was only saying that it could mean that, and Jorginho got 10 minutes to stay fresh. Maybe it's going to be Jorginho Rice with Trossard at false 9. I think we'll see some of the players being available again will make a difference. But I think if the team is pressing, having that extra experienced, quick passing, line breaking midfielder in Jorginho could matter. What do you think, Clive? How are we gonna approach this one?
Yeah, I think Jorginho's going to play a part in these next two games. Newcastle have a high energy team, so he's gonna. Whether he starts or finishes does not bother me in the slightest. I thought when he came on the weekend, I thought he was excellent when he came on. Honestly, I even thought Cedric looked good when he came on.
Stop.
He did. Come on, mate. He did. He looked good. Everyone wants the ball. The game is won. Let's see what I can do. I want to be part of this too. We got two massively emotional, high-pressured games. Jorginho is going to play significant minutes in both of these games. And that's exactly what... These are games we want him for because this is new territory, right? This is new territory for me. I'm looking online. I can see all the pictures of the planes, people on the planes already. It's Monday. It's going to be a long week. People on the way out there. And it's exciting. It's new. It's different. And that has an impact. So we got two massive games, mate. I said earlier. So, yeah, let's break those first 11s out of our head. And let's see what we can do. I know you gave Tim the injured player question, but those four players in Tomiyasu, Zinchenko, Jesus, and Partey are all due back in 1-2 weeks. And a young lad on the bench on the weekend called James Sweet, who's the fullback who had to step in for Rule Walters, who was injured. Rule Walters hadn't made a competitive debut yet. James Sweet hasn't made a competitive debut yet. If you're looking at those names, you know that we've got work to do. And so the future of this team is in the medical room, I'm afraid. Get those four players back and we're in business. We really are.
Vieira too. Vieira, Arteta said, had a chance for this game. And listen, I don't think we'll see him majorly for a couple of weeks. But again, that's it's probably a player we might physically get him back now, but really that's a player we're getting back in March, I think. And That's important. Exactly. That's when we were losing players last season. So if we can get them back, all the better.
Well said.
I also think if there's a chance for him to make an appearance in one of these games against his former side, especially back in Portugal, I think the manager might like to give him that opportunity, but this game probably comes too soon. Okay, look, we'll try to do some more about this. Obviously, we'll have some stuff from out in Portugal, which should be a lot of fun. I think we can leave it there. 90 minutes just about covers it. We look really good right now. And, again, much like we've talked about, last season, this was the time of the season where we started to lose players and fade. We're in the ascendancy right now. We are the form team. And, mid-February is a good time to start hitting that form. I can tell you, if I had any regret about this season upcoming, the only thing that annoys me is, of course, we go to the Etihad right after an international break. I hate that. I hate the tempo of that. I just hate everything about that. But there'll be plenty of time for me to whine about that later. So I'll just stow that one and start packing my bags to come out and see you guys. Cannot wait. Okay. Tim's on Twitter at Stillman. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
Clive's on Twitter, Clive PFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
If you could leave us a review, we would really appreciate it. As I understand it, that's more important now than ever for podcast discovery. So if you want to let people know about us, that's a way to do it. And we appreciate you if you do that. Otherwise, you don't have to. We love you. And we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10, Porto 0.